And we're live, everybody! Welcome out to Champions, YouTube friends. Dropping your comments and questions in that chat, and make sure you hammer the like and subscribe buttons as we preview this week's top UEFA action. With us in the House of Champions today, we got Michael Hood, James Bench, and Jonathan Johnson. How we doing, boys? Start with you, James Bench. How's it going, man, after yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday was very thrilling and stressful and quite a hard one to write about. I have no idea what to make of that game between the Premier League leaders and Liverpool. And I suspect no one will really know until the end of the season. But by God, what a game and what a way to get yourself warmed up for some Champions League action.
Great game of football. Interesting result at the end of the day, but another interesting result in France. PSG getting it done, JJ. Nobody expected it. Even I didn't expect it. But nice result from PSG this weekend in Nice.
Yeah, really heartwarming when you see the underdogs of Ligue 1 going away from home and getting a victory against Didier Degas' 14-game unbeaten Nice side. No, it was, to be honest, it was a really bizarre one because even in the event of victory, there's very little to say positively about it because Nice were the better side. Bit of a dodgy sort of disallowed goal given that a slice of the ball didn't go over the line, which stopped Nice from equalising. But them's the breaks, I guess. And yeah, it's a big one this weekend against my second favourite team in Ligue 1 loss.
Lovely to hear that. And let's turn our attention to Michael Hood. Well, I'll be goddamn the Austin Texans who didn't get it done in Los Angeles, baby.
No, but Manchester United got it done. Still sweating, though. Thursday, oof, going to be a tough one. Marcus Rashford, hope he gets back sooner rather than later.
Very calm and composed answer from Michael Hood right there. Let's hope the rest of the show remains to be the case as well. Boys, let's get into it. UEFA Champions League is back. We begin with games that are taking place on Tuesday. But if you have a look at the games that are taking place this week, it's phenomenal action. This is what we live for. This is, of course, the best of the best that are left in this tournament. On Tuesday, we do have Manchester City going up against Bayern Munich, Benfica against Inter Milan. And, of course, the following day, you've got Real Madrid, Chelsea, Milan against Napoli. There's a lot to look forward to here, but we begin with Manchester City's game against Bayern Munich. You know, James, I'll come to you first on this one here. I just noticed here that Manchester City are the favourites to lift this trophy this year. After the performance this weekend, everyone seemed to be raving about them with this emphatic goal from Erling Haaland, free-flowing football. But let's not forget who they played against this weekend, and it was an expected victory. Should we all be jumping on the back of this Manchester City to win it all in a Champions League campaign yet?
Well, I mean, I think they are the best team in the field and the best team in Europe by a significant margin. But I mean, you know, it's a bit like, you know, I mean, obviously this week as well, we've got the NBA playoffs being drawn. And it's a little bit like, you know, you have to think about someone's route to the final. Because, so, yeah, City are the best and City will be favourites against Bayern and they'll be favourites against whoever comes out the other time, Madrid or Chelsea. But there's a lot more room for an underdog win. There's a lot more marginal games than there are on the other side of the bracket with Napoli. So to be honest, I have Napoli as favourites almost by default in that you look at their path to the final and it's hard to see which of the three teams could actually knock them out, even after that kind of freak AC Milan win 10 or so days ago. That for me is the only thing. And look, you know, Man City are the best team there. And I think their system now is almost a little bit better for winning in Europe because they have to play around Erling Haaland. There's not much room for Pep Guardiola to mix and match and change his system at will. But that is a really tough way to get to the final. If they get to the final, they're huge favourites for me. But they do have to get there.
Oh, and obviously, Thomas Tuchel knows all about coming up against Pep Guardiola in the Champions League, given that was the final matchup in 2021 when Tuchel got the better of him. Not something that he's done that often when you look at the stats of how they sort of match up. But I think this managerial change, and I said it, you know, when it happened, this is really bad news for Manchester City and Pep Guardiola to suddenly see Bayern go from, you know, looking fairly vulnerable under Julian Nagelsmann despite knocking PSG out to suddenly looking a completely different beast under Thomas Tuchel. Yes, I know that they went out of the DFB Pokal to Freiburg. You know, fantastic scenes to see them go and get the win at Allianz Arena. But equally, this Bayern side have shown their teeth at times. I know that they're perhaps, not the force that they've been in previous seasons in attack at this moment in time, but it's still going to be very, very tricky over 2 legs. I mean, okay, Pep's had the best of it in their 2 most recent meetings, but you look at that sort of 3-game run where Tuchel came out on top, all with, Chelsea coming up against City in sort of, some of the latter stages of competitions, the final of the Champions League, the semi-finals there of the FA Cup as well. I think that this one is one where in many ways it really suits Tuchel, because I think he likes to have his back up against the wall a little bit, which he does with the attacking setup at Bayern at this moment in time. And given that it's over 2 legs, and obviously away goals don't count the way that they used to, I think that here, if they can avoid defeat in Manchester, that puts the pressure on City ahead of that second leg. And I think that's exactly the kind of scenario that Tuchel wants to create here.
I'm really intrigued by this matchup, not just because of the managerial combinations of Tuchel versus Pep, Haaland versus Bayern again, who is a decent record against in terms of goal scoring. I think it's 5 goals in his very young career against the Bavarian team. I'm really interested to see what type of formation Thomas Tuchel comes out with. As you saw on the graphic there, back 3, yes, he had to do that with Chelsea because he couldn't rely on a back 4 throughout his tenure. Does he switch to a back 3 with Bayern Munich? He hasn't done it yet. And then you have the storylines.
He has done it. First game in charge.
I stand corrected. I'm interested to see as well, Leroy Sané, João Cancelo. There's so many storylines, much more than just the 2 managers, much more than just the 2 heavyweights. I think Leroy Sané, he will be a big, big factor for Bayern Munich. In the last couple matches, he's been bobbing and weaving. He's come inches away from getting goals, getting assists. He will have to pick up where he left off in the group stages for Bayern Munich. He was playing as one of the best players in the world. I think if he gets hot, Manchester City are in trouble.
Got a bit of a question for you, Ian. Watching the second game against Freiburg, a 1-0 win, which obviously is good news for Bayern in the Bundesliga. But you know what? When I saw Tuchel take charge at Chelsea, it was immediate. Like the next game, as soon as he took charge, and I mean, literally, he took charge, and a few hours later, team was playing Wolves, and they became a defensive force overnight. And there was a little bit of luck in there. There was a little bit of bad finishing from opponents, but they were a clean sheet machine. Then you see Bayern, and I'm sure you know the chance I'm talking about, the one where Ritsu Doan hits the post about the 42nd minute, and Alphonso Davies has just entirely switched off, and you see so many moments, and I think this is obviously why we teased you about there being something not right at Bayern. You clearly were right. Is this a thing that they can get out of their heads, that Tuchel can get inside? Are they just too pre-programmed by life as being the best team in the Bundesliga by miles to get to a position where they don't make these sloppy mistakes? The other one I would say is 5 penalties they've conceded since the start of March. This is a team that always have these incredibly sloppy moments in them. So, Ian, can Tuchel coach those out of him?
Listen, it's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up, because obviously it's important to me that you guys all recognize I'm not mad in the head, that I recognize that Bayern, we're not clicking, not firing on all cylinders, even though the Champions League records is telling us otherwise. Listen, offensively, I think we all know that they're missing a striker. And Choupo is not the answer, even though he's injured for this game as well. It's unfortunate that he is missing, because he's been in very good form. It would be great to see him obviously have a performance, but he's going to miss this game as far as I'm concerned. I don't see him back in there. And I really don't know if he can have an impact in this game whatsoever at all anyway. I think defensively is the biggest key. That's my biggest concern about this team. Bayern this year have been one of my more favorable teams to bet on, because they have a habit of conceding goals and conceding goals pretty quickly. Then coming back and winning games, and coming back and drawing games, coming back and, maybe wiping teams out. But this season, I'm recognizing something different. I'm recognizing that there's a vulnerability defensively. There's a lack of confidence offensively. And JJ, maybe you can touch upon this as well. Kingsley Coman, normally the type of player, picks up the ball and you're going, this guy's going 1v1. He's going to just take it to the house. But at times there's a hesitancy from Kingsley Coman. Leroy Sané, sure, he's been one of the better players. Still a hesitancy from him going 1v1. They don't have a focal point striker. Choupo is a half-term answer right there for them right now as far as scoring goals. But defensively is my main concern. There's no way you stop Manchester City scoring goals in this Bayern defense. No chance. in both games, mark my words, Bayern Munich will score goals. If I'm proven wrong, I'll do this show in my kilt. I'll tell you right now, because I think that Bayern are so vulnerable right now. And it was proven, of course, in the DFB Pokal Cup that JJ brought up there. They were opened up completely, then gave away a penalty kick in the last minute of the game. Obviously, unfortunate with the handball against Musiala, but still opened up completely. And then there's not much you can do about bangers from 25 yards, but the chances they're giving up at the weekend, James, that one you talked about off the post, like lack of concentration, lack of cohesion. And Tuchel was furious on the sidelines at certain times in that game, where he knows he's got his work cut out to get this right in the Bundesliga, let alone in the Champions League. I think these two games against Manchester City, including the one at home, in particular the one at home against City, we'll find out exactly who Bayern Munich are. Mike, you think that Bayern Munich can go through in this tie? I don't think Bayern Munich have a chance in hell of going through against Manchester City over two ties. They may get a result against City in one of the ties, but there is not a chance in hell that this Bayern Munich side, even under Tuchel, who did get an immediate reaction against Dortmund, even under Tuchel, I don't think they've got the pieces to be competitive over two games. And it reminds me, sorry, I'm going on a bit here. It reminds me of the tie that Bayern faced against Liverpool. I don't know if you guys remember a little while back. Was it 1920 or something like that? It was 19 or 18, whatever it was, one of those 2 years, where I was going to the Allianz Arena, went to the game to watch them against Liverpool, and even the Bayern fans were saying, we can't compete with this team. They're just too good. And I think Bayern know that Manchester City are just too good on that one. Is that all right, James? Is that a good enough answer?
Oh yeah, pretty thorough that, wasn't it? Could have gone.
We're going to be stretching into volume 2 of this podcast. If we've got any more answers like this. And you guys give me a ribbing for my detailed responses. No, but it is fascinating, and I'm keen to see sort of what Tuchel does with Bayern sort of moving forward beyond this season, because obviously there's a lot of potential there, and there is potential for him to tighten up that back line. There are still some quality elements to it, even if they do, ship a lot of chances. It'll be interesting to see as well what happens with Manuel Neuer when he comes back and is fit, whether Tuchel sees to reinstate him or continues with someone like Jan Sommer, or perhaps if Nubel, ends up coming back from Monaco. But that's, cross that bridge when we come to it. But in terms of sort of what Tuchel is trying to get out of his players now, what I really noticed very early on, certainly in that first game against Dortmund, is that certain players have responded a little bit to Tuchel in terms of the ruthlessness that they've shown. Now, Thomas Muller, who sort of made a career out of being ruthless in front of goal, suddenly wakes up under Tuchel. Whether he's able to still do that, at this level against quality opponents like Manchester City, we're about to find out. But I think that's going to be something that's really important for Tuchel to do with this Bayern side. Probably not in time to knock City out over two legs here, but sort of in terms of his tenure overall, is getting Bayern to be ruthless again, because they haven't recently, dropping out of the Pokal. That gives Leipzig an opportunity to really stamp their mark on that competition. They've been run closer in Bundesliga this season, and for them to drop out at the quarterfinal stage, okay, it's not a complete disaster as it might have been if they dropped out against PSG, but still, it's not what Bayern are accustomed to. And I think when they looked at the possibility of bringing Tuchel in and replacing Nagelsmann with him, it's to reassert that kind of dominance. And in order to do that, in order for Tuchel to succeed, he's going to have to get that entire team to be way more ruthless than they've been in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'll just keep it very quick. And I think everyone's said their piece and said it well. Matchups I'm looking for in this match that no one's keeping an eye on and no one will look at on the surface. Jack Grealish versus Benjamin Pavard, if Tuchel goes with a back three or puts Pavard at right back. I think Jack Grealish, he is one of the unsung heroes of this Manchester City team. Benjamin Pavard, he will have to have one of his best games at the Etihad to just give Bayern a chance. And offensively, without Choupo-Moting, keep an eye on Serge Gnabry if he gets the start. Bayern have been searching for a striker. Gnabry got the start at the weekend. He has not looked like himself. I think that's been the big difference this season in attack. No Lewandowski. Last season, Gnabry, he was prolific, getting goals as a winger on either side. He will have to be back to form.
I love that I've managed to plant a seed in Mike's head because he was so confident before I gave my detailed response to Bayern Munich. And now that seed's planted, he's like, oh, yeah, they'll all have to be on form. Of course, they're going to have to be on form. Listen, I have been very, very wrong about Bayern in the Champions League. You know, as much as I may have been right saying that there wasn't something quite right at Bayern Munich, in the long run, in the Champions League, they've been just unbelievable. I mean, this has been their best performances of the season. They have waited for the Champions League. And if Bayern play well, absolutely they can get a result against City. But can they play well over 2 games? Don't believe it. All right, let's move on to the other game that's taking place on Tuesday. James, I'll come to you on this one. Benfica against Inter Milan. Obviously, Benfica against Porto on Friday night, I believe it was. Porto getting the victory there. Don't lose many games at home, Benfica. I'm expecting this one to be a very close affair with Inzaghi. Certainly on the rocks right now as far as the manager. Italian team's doing well in this competition, no doubt. But we have recognized already what Inter can do against Portuguese teams in this competition. What are you expecting from this matchup in Lisbon, starting with?
Yeah, it's a tight one. There's quite a lot here I feel like I don't fully understand yet. And I know, look, you know, everyone on our pod loves Benfica, and we're so impressed with the work they've done in the transfer market and in recruiting players to replace the ones that have gone. But frankly, I have to say, I don't feel like I've really seen them tested against the very best that Europe have to offer. And I mean, the Juventus team they played was a shadow of Juve, and PSG are not the best that Europe have to offer. And I don't think they're going to be with Inter. They have massively overperformed their expected goals this season in the Champions League, Benfica. But then again, Andre Onana, who had that absolute shocker against Salernitana, has also massively overperformed his expected goals. He's conceding 1 goal fewer than the XG of the shots he's facing every game in the Champions League. I think one of those 2 things has to break. I have no idea which one. I mean, like, this is the junior varsity Champions League quarterfinal anyway, isn't it? Like, I probably won't know afterwards because, you know, all eyes are going to be on Man City Bayern. And I think this could be a sort of slightly underwhelming game. So, yeah, don't ask me too much about this.
Yeah, I think you say JV, Inter Milan have been playing like a junior varsity team. They haven't won a game in their last 6 matches, and everything is seemingly going wrong, going against Inzaghi and his team. The only bright spot has been Romelu Lukaku. Gets goals, gets the assist for Goossens at the weekend. He looks like a player who's playing with a bit between his teeth. The rest of the team is reeling. They're playing with borrowed money. I don't think they are deserving of being here. FC Porto were so close to getting the goals. They were the better team across 2 legs, but it's not about being the better team. It's finding a way to get results. The difference in this tie is going to come down to if Lukaku delivers and if Onana gets back to delivering. That's how they won across the 2 ties. That is how they will have to go about this Benfica team who, yes, they lost against their rivals FC Porto. Gonzalo Ramos, it was awarded as an own goal, but this guy is made for the Champions League. He's made to lift off again in this tie. And also João Mario, goals from midfield, goals spread out throughout the team is what makes this Benfica team so difficult to play against.
I mean, I think the danger with reading so much into the numbers, especially with Benfica, is they had that one massive blowout win in the group stage, that huge goal swing at the end, which brought them out on top of PSG. I mean, we can't take away from what they managed to do because they were one of, I think it was just 2 teams in the end that went unbeaten going into the World Cup break, along with PSG. And obviously, they've managed to keep things a lot more solid since the World Cup, the return of club action after the World Cup. But I think as well, when you sort of look into those numbers, you're perhaps a bit more blown away than Benfica than you need to be. And for this, I feel like Benfica, certainly in what they've shown in the last couple of seasons, should still have enough. They're consistent enough. They don't get overawed at this stage of the competition. Whereas, for Italian clubs, it's a little bit sort of uncharted territory based on some of the, recent years to have this many clubs, go this far. Inter are perhaps one of the more experienced clubs, given the amount of time they've spent in the Champions League in recent years, but they're far from being even the best version of themselves that we've seen in the last couple of years since the Champions League came to Paramount Plus. So it's, for me, I feel like I agree with Mike. I think, Inter are fortunate to be there, and it seems like their season's starting to unravel a little bit at the worst possible time. There's a lot of question marks over Inzaghi. It doesn't seem like he's going to be in charge much longer, and they'll be looking for a new coach. But equally, I do think that there is a danger of perhaps overrating Benfica a little bit, and this one actually being a bit tighter than many of us expect. I do think that Benfica will advance over the 2 legs, but perhaps, given that this is now sort of Inter's last chance to really salvage something, certainly on the continental stage this season, I think that they'll run Benfica a bit closer than maybe we suspect.
I'm saying that Manchester City score 3 goals against this Bayern Munich defense, and I'm also predicting a low-scoring Benfica game against Inter Milan. I can see it being 0-0 or 1-0 to either side in that game. James, give me a quick prediction. Mike, and then JJ, real quickly.
Yeah, 2-0 win for Man City and 2-1 for Benfica.
Mike?
I'm going 3-1 City and 2-1 Benfica.
I'm going 1-1 in the City game, and I think I went 1-0 Benfica in the Inter game.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. More to come from us when we return.
Absolutely magisterial here.
CBS Sports Golazo Network, the first of one of its kind, a free 24/7 channel dedicated exclusively to global soccer coverage, is launching tomorrow. Yes, that's right, Tuesday the 11th on the CBS Sports app, Pluto TV, and Paramount Plus. Get your morning started off on the right foot at 7 a.m. Eastern with Morning Footy, our weekday soccer culture-driven morning show. Plus, don't miss the rest of our comprehensive programming lineup, including live matches and re-airs, original studio shows, highlights, documentaries, and so much more. CBS Sports Golazo Network is the ultimate year-round streaming destination for fans of the beautiful game.
Is there
Welcome
anything
back,
I can watch
everybody.
in the afternoon, Ian, if I've had a bit of a lie-in?
Just going to say, watch this space. Maybe see some news breaking soon. Just watch this space. Now, this is going to be great. Obviously, great for everybody in the United States of America to have 24/7 soccer, especially you young ones out there. I know we are obviously targeting a certain age group, and we see it on our show, but the young ones out there who are looking for soccer content, getting a free 24/7 soccer channel right on your device, we're coming for you. Make sure you switch on every single day. Welcome back, everybody. You're watching House of Champions. Ian Joy, James Bench, Michael Hood, and Jonathan Johnson with you. We turn our attention to Wednesday's fixtures of the UEFA Champions League. Looking forward to the first leg games between Real Madrid and Chelsea, AC Milan and Napoli. 2 cracking games, of course, on Wednesday. And these ones are very close to predict here. James, I'm coming to you first on this one, because as we turn our attention to Real Madrid versus Chelsea, you said something the other day that caught my attention very much so. And that was that you believed that even though, and you were right, by the way, Chelsea were going to struggle at the weekend against Wolves, that they had a chance of knocking Real Madrid out of the Champions League. And before everybody in our comments goes crazy, let's listen to James and hear what he has to offer us.
Come at me, internet. I do appreciate that this could backfire quite spectacularly. However, I am more confident now than I was last week, not less, in spite of another insipid Chelsea performance in the Premier League. Why do Real Madrid win Champions League games? They win it because they get your midfield in a blender. They dominate you. They set the terms of engagement because they have the best midfield on the pitch. I would contend that this is subject to N'Golo Kante being as good as he was against Liverpool last week. I would contend then that Madrid do not have the best midfield on the pitch. Enzo Fernandez has taken to the Premier League like a duck to water. He is the second most effective player in terms of passes into the final third, second in terms of line-breaking passes. He is a pass master. He is a player that can set the tempo. He will have next to him, you would assume, N'Golo Kante and Mateo Kovacic, who can do everything in midfield and quite possibly have legs that maybe Modric and Kroos don't. If you can set the terms of engagement in midfield, you just close off some gaps that allow Madrid to get quick ball out to Vinicius, to get the service to Karim Benzema. This Madrid team isn't perfect. This Chelsea team certainly isn't perfect. But I think Chelsea can win the midfield battle. And if you do that in any game against any opponent, you've got a really good chance. And by God, I could be looking stupid in 8 or 10 9 games time. But let's go for it. You live once. I think Chelsea are going to set up an all-English Champions League semi-final.
Wow. James, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering what the hell you've been drinking, because I'm not seeing it. I wasn't seeing it before Frank Lampard took over.
Can I just say, Rafa's asked the right question there, which is who on earth is scoring basketball club?
Thank you. That's exactly why I'm not seeing it with this Chelsea
PKs.
team in the first leg. No, I'm not. Look, they've scored 2 goals in their last 4 matches. 1 shot on target against Wolves. 1 shot on target. You can shoot from distance. You can do it. But if you're only getting 1 shot on target against Wolves, oh, man, I'm not feeling good for Chelsea at all. They don't have an answer for Vinicius Jr. Yes, Reece James. That's going to be a hell of a matchup to watch. But the form that Vinny Jr. is in right now, Kareem the Dream plays when he wants, and it just happens that he loves to play in the UEFA Champions League when he wants, which is every time Madrid have a knockout stage game. This is a scary matchup for Chelsea, but we've seen it before. This Chelsea team find a way to claw and make it competitive, make it close. I don't see it. I think Madrid, they will grow in this game. I see Chelsea coming out of the blocks, but I see Madrid being the ultimate winner. There's too much talent on the field for Chelsea.
I mean, I think if Chelsea, could pull off the rare feat of scoring the opening goal and an early goal, that could actually be really bad news for them, because I've been saying this for a couple of weeks about Real. They're at the stage of their season now where they don't have anything to play for in La Liga. That's gone. Barcelona romping, way clear now at the top. They do have that shot at Copa del Rey glory, having beaten Barca to get to the final. And they seem now to be picking and choosing the games where they deliver the best performances. I think if Chelsea make a strong start, that will make Real Madrid feel like they're really in a Champions League quarterfinal. The danger, I think, for Real is that Chelsea are a bit insipid, very average, and Real suddenly feel like they're major favorites. I think when faced with adversity, this Real side wakes up and it's capable of delivering very, very strong performances when they feel threatened. And perhaps, what James was talking about, this possibility of maybe seeing Conte coming back and being at a similar level to how he was against Liverpool, is perhaps what Real Madrid need in order to make themselves feel like, Chelsea are a team that they need to take really seriously. Because I think based on what they've been seeing from Chelsea over the last couple of weeks, I don't think they're going to be too worried. And perhaps complacency is actually perhaps they're going to be the route to their downfall.
Well said, all of you. Very well said. And I love the fact that you're all speaking from experience, knowledge, passion, and what you really believe. Is very important to do so. Like a lot of our followers and listeners right now who are in the comments producing some absolute gold dust here. This one starting from Ed. He says, Fat Frank hasn't got a chance. Don Carlo ain't even going to need to raise his eyebrows. Amy said, Real Madrid 5-1. Kishwan, he said, Conte will be the best player on the pitch. Rafa jumping in and saying, James, who on earth is scoring past Courtois? Musto 5-1 Real Madrid. Ed jumping back in. Might need to start doing some random drug testing on this podcast because James is definitely on something.
That he is.
Oh, man, brilliant.
There was one more.
In a long weekend.
Kishwan jumped in and said, Kai Havertz is afraid of scoring goals. Absolute goal dust, everybody.
The goal he didn't score against Liverpool is the most Chelsea 22-23 thing I've ever seen, where the ball bounces in off his arm. I think I have to say, this is the whole problem with my theory, is that someone at Chelsea has to kick a football into a goal. But
yeah,
maybe Antonio Rudiger will do it for them.
When you put it out there like you have done, if it doesn't hit, it's okay. Nobody expected it to hit anyway. But if it hits, you best believe it that we're rewinding this tape and it's going all across this Golazo network. We're starting with this comment right here. James Bench front and center. Real quickly before we move on from this game, JJ, I want to come to you on this one here because this was an interesting story about Valverde and Alex Buena in the car park after the game. Now, unfortunately, I did play, and many a times I left it away from the field into the tunnel, into the car park where nobody can see. But apparently the car park is an area where everyone can still see. And this was a problem for Valverde at the end of the day, JJ. This is a crazy story.
Yeah, it is a crazy story, but I think, sort of when you take into account the sort of severity, the kind of backstory behind it, unfortunately, it's been sort of well documented the last couple of days about sort of how he and his partner have, found his partner's pregnancy under quite significant risk of late, to have sort of a player throw that kind of thing out there. I mean, in many respects, you kind of expect, trash talking. I mean, certainly the Uruguayans are no strangers to those sorts of tactics. But equally, there are some things that get said that come, quite close to the mark. And I think it was Gus Poyet who was saying, like, if he was in Valverde's situation, he'd have done the same thing. I mean, I think we're all human, and we can sort of relate to reacting that way when something as serious as that has been said. But equally, it's also not a great look when you sort of have that premeditated response where you're sort of waiting for somebody in the car park. You have that opportunity to reflect a little bit, do the right thing, and then apparently you still go and chin the person afterwards. So, I can understand why the reaction has been so explosive. But equally, I think unfortunately this is just kind of par for the course sometimes, and you have to expect that some opponents are going to dig really, really deep to try and get under your skin, to try and wind you up, and it's up to you to sort of be the bigger person, even if we can understand why it's provoked such an emotional response.
Chat shit, get banged. My theory. End of the day. You're going to go there and you're going to go deep into my story. You best believe it. I'm waiting for you in the car park. I got a lot of respect for people who wait until they're off the field, away from danger. And maybe you don't get to turn to violence. I understand that, and I respect where you're coming from as well, JJ. It doesn't need to go to violence. But if you're going to have this discussion and it is going to get heated, you're better to do it away from the field than you are in front of a million cameras. It's just unfortunate that the story came out, and certainly unfortunate to see this type of story full stop in football. Let's move on. AC Milan against Napoli. Mike, I'm coming to you on this one here. This one is a crazy game, by the way. I have no idea which way to go in this game now. I don't. James is smiling. JJ's wondering what I'm about to go and say here, but I'm coming to you first, Mike, on this one. There is a chance that Osimhen could be available for this game. What fitness, we have no idea. Is it a risk throwing him into this first leg? I don't know if it's worth that risk. I think maybe you look to try and get a result in the first game and then get back to Naples. But then is that be careful what you wish for status there after what happened when Milan absolutely banged them by 4 goals in Naples only recently? Your thoughts on this time?
I think we'll see a Napoli side take a more cautious approach. They barely squeaked through. An own goal was the difference at the weekend against Lecce, who we said it in the previews, the weekend previews. Lecce keeps it tight, but there is a nervousness about Napoli. And you see this with teams that are on this miracle run throughout their season. They get the chink in their armor, and this time it's through injury, through their talisman. Going away to Africa, I've been there as a player. When you pick up an injury in one of those games, the travel back, it comes at the worst time for this Napoli side. I think you go the safer route. You do the bigger picture. You're not going to win the tie over one match, but you can sure as hell put yourself in a hole if you really go for it and find yourself 4 goals down. I think this is going to be a much closer game, less expansive than we saw in that Serie A drubbing that Milan went to Napoli and gave him 4. Rafa Leao, this guy is just a revelation for Serie A in the last 2 seasons. And Brahim Diaz, those 2 players, I think that Pioli, he will look to them to be the ones who rattle this Napoli side without Osimhen. For Milan, you have to smell blood in the water. You have to really go for it, because when Osimhen gets back for this second leg, and it's been reported that he's been in individual training leading up to this match, typically that's a more cautious approach, saying, hey, we may put him on the bench, we may not. We'll save him for the second leg. You have to take advantage. You have to get as many goals as possible. It won't be easy because this Napoli defense has been stingy throughout the season.
Just quick update on Osimhen that's kind of come out in the last hour or so. It sounds like today as well. There was hope he might have joined group training today, but yeah, as Mike sort of alluded to there, he's been training on his own. So pretty unlikely that he will be able to feature from the off. Couple of thoughts on this from a Napoli perspective. First of all, I think you can throw that 4-0 result, certainly from Napoli's view, just throw it in the bin. Spalletti came out and basically said, look, we had no motivation. Milan had all the motivation fighting for their top 4 spot. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm actually more worried about that performance against Lecce, because if you're looking for a slightly worrying trend in terms of Napoli and where they've been at, they do have been giving up a few more chances than you would expect from a team of their standard offset pieces. I mean, Samuel Umtiti is obviously a really dominant force in the air, but so is Olivier Giroud. Like, this Napoli team is so good that you do find yourself picking at the tiny details, but those tiny details, this is the stage of the season where they can go from little fissures to big cracks. So maybe, yeah, keep an eye out for what Olivier Giroud can do in the air, even though I would say Napoli have to be strong favourites with or without Osimhen.
I mean, I think these kind of moments as well are a big test of a team like Napoli's credentials. You know, they're looking like strong favourites in Serie A, logically, given the lead that they've built up for themselves. And they have a great chance in the Champions League as well, given the way that the draw has fallen. But equally, you're not going to run through an entire season absolutely annihilating some of the teams in the way that Napoli were earlier in the season. There's going to be some moments during the campaign where you have to grind out the results. And Napoli are in that phase right now where, they know ahead of this two-legged encounter, that they can, come out on top of Milan, if they play at the best of their abilities. That doesn't necessarily mean killing it in this first leg. So, if the sort of players to get Osimhen back involved and to really be, somebody who can have a say on the remainder of their season, it's better to not risk him here, to go into it, perhaps, consider that coming out of this with a draw is not the worst result. I agree with Mike. I think it's going to be a tight one. I can see Napoli maybe just about scraping the win, but I don't think necessarily being pushed close by some of their Serie A opponents of late is such a bad thing for this Napoli side, because they're going to have to, absolutely claw their way to victory in some of these remaining games this season in order to have, as good a chance of success, certainly on the continental stage. So for me, I think that perhaps it's in many ways ideal preparation coming into this one. And like I said before, a good result doesn't necessarily have to be a win, certainly not at this stage. If they can come away with the draw, that sets them up nicely, for that second leg at home, which I feel will be decisive for this.
Nothing better preparation-wise for AC Milan than after beating Napoli by 4-0 away from home, than a 0-0 at home to Empoli ahead of this one. What a shocking game that was, by the way. 24 shots in that game from Milan, 4 of them on target. It was an absolute nonsense game. They thought they scored a winner at the end of the game, Giroud did, but it was a little handball, and in the end finished 0-0. Quick predictions, we'll go James, Mike, and then JJ. Real Madrid, Chelsea, AC Milan, Napoli.
Real Madrid 0, Chelsea 0. We'll save their goals. And then I think Napoli are going to win 2-0. I can't remember what I said. JJ and I will tell you, we have to write like 700 different versions every Champions League week. I don't know what canon is for me anymore, but I think Napoli are going to win 2-0.
I'm going Real Madrid 2, Chelsea, big, that's 0. And then on the Napoli-Milan side, I'm going 1-1 draw.
Guys, I'm going rogue. I do have Chelsea scoring along with James Bench, but I also have Real scoring 3 times. So I'm going 3-1 Real. And in Napoli's game against Milan, I can see them getting a 2-1 win. It really wouldn't surprise me if it's a score draw, but I'm going to, stay faithful to the positivity that we've had towards Napoli all season long on the pod, and I'm going to say they come out of it 2-1 winners.
I'm going 1-0 in both games, both home sides to win by 1-0. And James, Olivier Giroud to get the winning goal here for Milan in this tie. I still think Napoli will go through, but I think Milan will get the job done in this first game. And then I'm intrigued. I think James might have just intrigued me a little too much about Chelsea. That's why I'm going for 1-0. Play it safe right there.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
As James said, though, we've got our predictions are up in writing for days leading into the game, so I can't really back down now after some very convincing arguments.
I love that. Love to hear it. Everybody go check it out on the CBS Sports website as well. All right, quick break. More to come from us. When we come, we'll turn our attention to what's happened in Europa League next.
Italy's best clubs and brightest stars bring show-stopping skills and unbelievable thrills in the fight to the finish for the Scudetto. Stream every Serie A match live on Paramount Plus.
If you're a US-based fan of the beautiful game, Paramount Plus is an absolute must-have subscription, from the NWSL to the Champions League to Serie A and so much more in between. Not sure if it's for you? Then you can try 1 month free by using the code NWSL2020. 2023. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching House of Champions. It's Ian Joy, James Benj, Michael Hood, and Jonathan Johnson with you ahead of this incredible UEFA week. Looking forward to seeing what happens in the quarterfinals across UEFA competitions. We turn our attention to the Europa League now. Manchester United, Sevilla, Juventus, Sporting Lisbon, Feyenoord, Roma, Bayern Leverkusen against Union Saint-Someone. And then, of course, Michael, it's your turn to go first. Manchester United, Sevilla, Rashford injury must be a concern for you, right?
Yes, very, very, very much concerned. There's been question marks of, are United Rashford dependent? Yes, the answer is yes. They do have Casemiro back in the fold. That's proven to be very important. But where are the goals going to come from? If anyone in the group chat says, Veghorst, I'm coming to your house, and you and I are going to have a very difficult conversation. Not seeing it with that guy. But the fact that Anthony Martial did get a goal at the weekend is going to be massive for his confidence and massive for potential production. But the big question mark is how long Marcus Rashford is out, because that will have an implication on the rest of their season.
You think they get the job done, though, Mike? I mean, you don't sound too confident here. This is a Sevilla that pretty much have their name already stitched on this trophy. I mean, they should have renamed this a few years back, but this is not the same Sevilla side, I would imagine.
I do think they get the job done. Watching Sevilla versus Celta Vigo, Sevilla are a team that find ways to throw games away this season. There's not as much of that savviness. They're an emotional side. El Nesri, he has been the player in form for them, not so much in the Europa League. And Eric Lamela, he's really come to life in the second half of the season since the World Cup. Those two players will make it difficult for United. I think it's going to be more difficult being the home team in this tie for United than being the away team. I think making competitive, grinding out a result away to Sevilla is going to be important, but then managing the game in that second leg is going to be how they win this tie.
One thing I'd just dive in and say, credit to Man United, and to an extent, credit to Tottenham for kind of ending this top four race, or near enough ending it. So one of the real advantages is, as Mike rightly noted there, the problem they've got is it's going to be really hard to score against Sevilla. But at least Ten Hag can go out both these games pretty much full strength. Nottingham Forest away in between them. The City ground is a very hard place to go, but Forest have dropped off a little bit. So I would think Ten Hag will look at these three games and think, I can hold some players back in the Premier League. Even if we do drop points, we've got enough wiggle room there. That to me means you kind of have to make United quite strong favourites for this tie, because Sevilla are rubbish as well.
I mean, when you say that the race for the top four is over, does that mean that you're convinced that Unai Emery's Aston Villa are breaking into it?
Let's be crystal clear on this. That is, if anyone that follows XG even takes a cursory glance at Aston Villa's XG, it's going to end in tears sooner or later. That's all I'll say.
JJ, can I turn my attention to Juventus against Sporting Lisbon with you, Juve losing at Lazio this past match day. This is a tough one to call, actually. Sporting Lisbon, obviously, we don't expect too much from them, but Juventus still have a vulnerability about them. What are you expecting from this tie?
Yeah, they do have a vulnerability about them, and they still, are fighting to get themselves back into the, the real, European qualifications places in Serie A for the remainder of the season. Obviously, we know that they had, that 15-point deduction. For me, normally I would have favored Juventus, but Juve, they've been such a difficult watch throughout the majority of the season. Even when they had that uptick in form recently that's pushed them back into contention in the league, it's still not been entirely convincing. And Sporting had their moments where they looked very good in the Champions League. Obviously, dumping out Arsenal is nothing to be sniffed at, at this stage as well. So for me, I think that this, potentially has the makings of being, one bridge too far for Juventus. Obviously, they've got that base level of ability and quality where they're able to blow away teams like Nantes, despite a fantastic atmosphere for that second leg. But, coming up against Sporting, that's an entirely different beast. And I feel like Sporting could be really tricky customers for Juve. I think it'll be close over the two legs, but it really wouldn't surprise me if Sporting avoided defeat away from home and then managed to get the job done once they take it back to Portugal.
Can I throw in my favourites to win the Europa League? I think Bayer Leverkusen, who have won somewhere in the region of 7 or 8 games straight and are really starting to look like a force under Xabi Alonso. This is the team to watch out. I think their path to the final is a little bit easier than United's, whether it's Juventus or Sporting that get through. And Ian, I know you'll agree with me on this. I think they might have the best player in the competition in one Florian Wirtz, who I have been going on about for years. And great to see him. Was it 2 assists at the weekend as they kind of took apart Eintracht Frankfurt, a good Eintracht Frankfurt team. The only thing you would say with Leverkusen is they're playing so well and they're winning so many games that suddenly the idea that they can just focus on the Europa League, it's a little bit out there. You know, they could achieve something in the Bundesliga as well, but a fantastic team. They play really proactive, front-footed football. They play the football you would expect a Xabi Alonso team to play. Union Saint-Gilloise, I'm not taking them lightly for an instant. I just think Bayer Leverkusen are really, really special, and they're the one I'd keep an eye on if I'm unfamiliar with the Europa League teams.
No, if I could just jump in and piggyback on James's question to add to Ian as well, I've noticed that Amin Adli has come back into contention as well. Very talented young player, fantastic ability, and it seems to have woken up Moussa Diaby as well. Do you think that sort of this kind of goal glut that they showed, certainly when they knocked Monaco out, is something that they could continue for a couple of rounds further? Because that seems like a very, very potent mix when you have Diaby, Adli, and Wirtz, all firing at the same time.
By the way, they've still got a lot of injuries, Leverkusen, that they're dealing with right now. And the fact that they're not at full strength is a bit of a concern. But the fact that they're in form right now, as James pointed out, here's a couple of stats here to back you up, James. Leverkusen won 7 in a row now across all competitions. They're unbeaten in 9 games across all comps. And in the Bundesliga in particular, they're unbeaten in 6, won the last 5 consecutive, and scored 15 goals in the last 4 games in the Bundesliga. I mean, they're scoring goals now, and I think Xabi Alonso, it took him a minute here just to get it right for the way he wanted to. It also took a minute to get Florian Wirtz back healthy. Also took a minute to get Adli back playing, to get players confident again. And he's not got a full-strength squad, so that tells me there's more to come from this Leverkusen side. And Adli, by the way, at the weekend, JJ, the way he took that first goal was phenomenal. Such composure. Never thought he was as quick as he was. He showed it at the weekend how quick he was. And emphatic, composed finish as well to follow suit. I'm just impressed with what Xabi Alonso is doing with his squad immensely. I mean, I'm really, really impressed. And I think that they've got a real opportunity to do damage in the Bundesliga now and potentially get themselves into a top 4 finish. But I wouldn't put it past them from being a team to be worried about in this competition. If they can get past this Union Saint-Gilloise squad, who obviously have had success against Union Berlin, and I think they scored 3 goals in Berlin in that first leg. So they are a danger, and they're a team you can't take lightly, because Union Berlin are not an easy team to beat either. But Leverkusen are definitely my favourites. Let's finish with Roma real quickly before we get out of here. There's a great story coming up before we discuss this game. Michael, come to you on this one here. Mourinho's devastating quote about Cassano this week. Producer Des loves this one. Cassano played for Roma, Inter, and Real. In Madrid, he is remembered for his jacket. With Roma, he won a Supercopa without playing. And for Inter, he didn't even win the Lombardi Cup. You know what? I won with Inter, Real Madrid, and Roma. He will have a problem with me, and I won't with him. I'm not going to lie. I love the comments, even though I'm a huge Cassano fan. This was an interesting quote and comment and timing for this, especially ahead of a big game against Feyenoord right now, who are a very dangerous side.
One thing that I hope we've all learned is don't mess with Jose Mourinho, especially in the press and through the press. This guy is undefeated. I mean, he has my most iconic quote: "If I speak, I am in trouble." Don't mess with this guy. But on the field, I think this tie is very intriguing. Feyenoord is having an amazing season in the Eredivisie, top of the league. I think they're 10 points ahead of Ajax. No one saw that coming.
8 points.
8 points, excuse me. My math is off today. But they're top of the league in the Netherlands. They're getting goals from everywhere. Up top, the guy that I love that's been their talisman in this competition, Santiago Jimenez. This guy played in Liga MX, and we've seen countless Liga MX players and players from the Mexican national team go over to the Netherlands. Eric Gutierrez at PSV having success. Now Jimenez having success with Feyenoord. In midfield, they're getting goals. It's not just getting goals from up top, but also in midfield with their Turkish attacking midfielder, Kirkçu. Last season in the Conference League, he was one of their standout players that helped get them to the final against Jose Mourinho's AS Roma side. So a little bit of storyline there. For Roma, it's between 2 players. It's Pellegrini getting the assists, getting goals in this competition. Not as much in Serie A, but has come to life. And Paulo Dybala, this guy was brought in to deliver performances. He has been their offensive juggernaut, especially in the last couple of games. Roma as well, climbing the Serie A table in third place in Serie A.
See, I'm going to have to be really biased on this one. Feyenoord are a massive threat with the Dutch coefficient where it is, like to French football. So I've got my fingers crossed that Feyenoord get dumped out and that Nice do the business and go all the way and win the Europa Conference League. But in all seriousness, that deep run that Feyenoord had a year ago or so, that was absolutely crucial in boosting up the Dutch coefficient, for UEFA. So you can't write them out at this level. They are, establishing themselves very, very well as a team to be reckoned with once again on the continental stage. I mean, I do still fancy Roma slightly because, you have that wealth of experience that Mourinho brings. And obviously, he's got in his sights the potential to win the Europa League now, having won the Europa Conference League. And who knows, maybe he'll fancy himself for another shot at the Champions League at some point in the future, maybe not. But for me, I think that Roma do probably still have the edge, but you cannot write off this Feyenoord side.
Just two things I wanted to end on. First of all, I believe Des has got this lined up. So for those people watching on YouTube, they can actually see this Antonio Cassano jacket, which I was unaware of before the Mourinho's quote. I can't quite tell. So it's a sort of corduroy-ish jacket with a fur lining that looks like he's just wrapped a fox around his neck, Game of Thrones style. He signed for Madrid. I assume in the summer. The guy must have been roasting alive. How on earth he put on so much weight if he had that jacket to sweat out?
I think there's actually there's a funny point, additional point to this story about him gaining all the weight. Does he not blame it on like the Nutella that got supplied by like club sponsors or something as well? I'm pretty sure he does.
What a guy! What a guy! And though that if he was still playing in 2023, he wouldn't be lighting up the Europa League because he wouldn't be good enough. He'd be lighting up the Conference League. And I just want to throw everyone in the direction of the Conference League before we wrap up, because there's some great games. I know, JJ, you mentioned Basel, Nice, Fiorentina as well. They've got to feel like they've got a strong chance of getting some European silverware against Lech Poznan, and also keep an eye on West Ham against Ghent. I can't think of many things more West Hamish than them winning a European trophy and getting relegated. And that could happen because going away to Ghent and then they've got Arsenal then in the Premier League. They're losing to Arsenal, certainly on Sunday.
Final comment before we get out of here, James. It was an emphatic result at this weekend with Arsenal and Liverpool. I'm going to just leave it with you real quickly because that was a hell of a game, right?
Yeah, probably it was both like 2 points lost for Arsenal and a point gained. And I think that tells you everything about what a brilliant match it was. Who on earth knows? It's impossible to know whether it's a superbly earned point that might win them the title or if it is the 2 points that cost them. But just one of the best games I've seen in years. And even as someone with, let's be honest, a bit of a rooting interest in it, I think you had to kind of at some stage take a step back and go, wow, this was top Premier League football. But I don't think Liverpool are that good.
When you said that there, JJ was like, is he talking about Aston Villa? JJ, I'm happy for you, buddy. That's a hell of a run they're on right now. Long may it continue. Guys, excellent stuff. It's always great to speak to you guys. Welcome to another week, everybody at House of Champions. Go check out. We have an incredible schedule this week. We're going to be very busy, very active. Make sure you're following. Make sure you're listening. Make sure you're liking and subscribing. Make sure you're leaving comments. It means the world to us. And thank you to everybody who's jumped in the comments already. Very active this morning. We appreciate it. The Champions League is coming up. Europa League and Conference also coming up this week. You can catch it all on Paramount Plus and CBS Sports. Make sure you check out the Golazo Network starting April 11th as well. That's going to be a lot of fun. But we will be back. We will be very active here on House of Champions. And again, we'll be back on Tuesday post games with everybody. And then again on Wednesday. But we also have shows in between as well, with Thursday being a very active day. Fabrizio's back on with us then. Thank you to everybody. Thanks to the boys. Appreciate you all. Enjoy your Monday. Enjoy, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you so much to everybody out there who's listening, just to you in particular, to listening to House of Champions. Take a minute, as I mentioned before, to leave us that rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere else you listen to your podcast. Also available as video, so subscribe to us on YouTube and leave a comment. House of Champions signing out. See you again after the games on Tuesday.